I was in downtown LA. I was doing a comedy show at this, maybe it was a strip club, I don't know what it was. It was some weird venue. And I run into this guy that I know after I get off stage named Little Larry. And here's the things you gotta understand about Little Larry. His name is Larry, and he's little. He's this tiny, tiny, itty-bitty little guy. Like, I mean, he's not technically a dwarf or a midget, but he's perfectly proportional. Like, he's got a tiny little nose and little hands, and I mean, I'm a straight guy, but he's kind of cute, you know? He's a little tiny person. And he's all psyched to see me, and clearly he's really buzzed, and he asked me if I can give him a ride home to the San Fernando Valley. At that time, I didn't live in the Valley. And I'm sympathetic to anybody that needs a ride around LA, so I say, sure, man, but first, I want to stop at this comedian party at a bar on Melrose. And he goes, bar? Melrose? Party? Cool. So we get in my car, and as we're driving from downtown over to Melrose, right, Larry kind of tells me what's going on with him, his life. He told me that he had been the personal assistant to the actor Anthony Michael Hall, who had promised him, like, fame and fortune, right? And then, because Anthony Michael Hall, according to Larry, is a megalomaniacal, bitter, angry, drug-addicted asshole, Anthony Michael Hall fucked him over and destroyed his life. So, you know, basically Larry was so angry and despondent, he made me feel happy and well-adjusted. So we're driving home, we get to Melrose, we go inside this dark bar, we go to the back, I introduce him to my friend Andrew and a couple other guys, and then he goes off and does his own thing. I'm not worried about him, he's a big guy. Well, he's not a big guy, he's a tiny guy, but he's a grown-up. He's an adult. So a little bit later on, I notice this commotion, and I see these two big, employees of the bar have marched to the back of the bar area, and they have grabbed somebody, and then they're taking that person back up to the front near the door with like one on each side, you know, thing on the arm and the shoulder, and holding the other, you know, the other arm, like you see in the movies and stuff. And I look over and just like, that's Little Larry! Like, they're taking Little Larry out of this place like he's a criminal. So I have to take care of him. I am now his shepherd somehow, you know? So I say to my friend, hey, I gotta go. So I run up there, and Little Larry is out on the sidewalk at this point. He's been ejected. And he's out of his mind. And he basically is screaming at the two big bouncer guys out on the sidewalk, and he's like, fuck you motherfucking assholes! And projectile spits at these guys. A bad idea. Bad idea. Definitely a lot of Dutch courage there, because these guys could have broken Larry into even smaller pieces. They were enormous, and I'm like, he's out of his mind, he's really, really drunk, I'm gonna take him home, don't worry, I'm gonna take him home. And they're like, good idea, pal. Says like hipster jock number one, right? And so we're out on the sidewalk, and I realized like how stupefyingly, completely, just shit-faced, out of his mind Larry is. It's unbelievable. And I put him in the passenger seat, and I get in, and as we're leaving the curb on Melrose, I go, Larry, where do you live in the valley? And he goes, Van Nuys and Coldwater Canyon. And then he's out, completely unconscious. So I'm like, okay, I'll sort that out, whatever. Okay, it's some kind of a sort of address, I guess. 101, get off the 101 at Coldwater, and then I'm like, wait a second! Van Nuys Boulevard and Coldwater Canyon Boulevard are parallel! That's not even an intersection! I don't even have like 8 or 12 structures to choose from to knock on doors or try to key. They're a mile apart, and if it's Coldwater Canyon in the Van Nuys neighborhood, that's 3 or 4 miles of residential boulevard. So I got a problem. Larry is basically, I mean, one step away from dead at this point. Like, I pull over to a gas station right there next to the 101. And I'm like, oh my God, I gotta wake this guy up. I gotta wake this guy up, you know? So I try. First, I'm like, shake, shake, shake. Nothing, right? Then I'm like, poke, poke, poke. Nothing. And then I gotta like, seriously, I gotta do this. So I'm like, slap, slap, slap. You know what I mean? And nothing. And at first I'm hesitant to slap another person, but then it's kind of fun. I just got not like. Then I'm afraid a cop is gonna come by, see us, and think we're like a dysfunctional gay couple having a fight. Probably on drugs. So I don't know what to do. And I'm like, I wanna go home. And I call Andrew, my friend, at the party. He goes, oh dude, that sucks. I'm like, do you know how to wake up like a unbelievably unconscious person? He's like, no, you try slapping? I'm like, dude, I'm way beyond slapping him. I'm pouring water on him right now as we speak. And he's like, oh, how about this, man? Why don't you just drive home and take him into your apartment? And I go, well, dude, first of all, he'll probably piss on the floor. And second of all, my roommate, who was a woman at the time, maybe get up in the night to go to the bathroom, and she'll think there's a dead dwarf in the apartment. And that's not fair. So he goes, well, why don't you just park the car outside on the street and just leave him inside? and then he'll let himself out in the morning. And I'm like, that is a horrible idea, but it's like the best thing I got so far. So I get on the freeway and I go back over the hill, and as I'm driving over the hill coming down to Hollywood, all of a sudden it hits me, wait a second, who knows a lot about intoxicated people and life emergencies? My friend Bob, the bartender at Birds on Franklin. So I park on the side street in Franklin, and I run in, and I leave Larry, you know, obviously like in the car, unconscious or dead, I don't really know. But anyway, I run in, and I'm like, tell Bob the story, and he goes, well, I mean, man, you wouldn't really want him to actually die in your car. And the next day, you would feel really bad about that. So why don't you take him to that Presbyterian hospital over in East Hollywood, just below Los Feliz. They've got to take him. They've got to take him. Take him there. And I said, great idea. Thanks, Bob. And I run back, and I drive over to the thing, and I pull in. They have this big, grand, circular entryway. And I, leave the car out there, and I run into the emergency room, and I'm all psyched. And I run in, I see a guard, and I'm like, blah, 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 the little tiny guy just passed down the car, blah, blah. And he's like, well, no, sir, if you check him in, if you bring him in, you gotta stay here until he is all checked out. He's your guy. You are his, guardian at that point. I'm like, oh, you can't just dump a unconscious body. What's going on in this society? So I go outside, I'm really bumming out now. I just want to go home and go to sleep. And there's these two nurses who are on break smoking cigarettes. And I swear, they're healthy cigarettes, I guess. And I call out to one of them comes over, this really nice black woman, and I tell her the situation. She goes, oh, little Larry won't wake up? And I go, no, I tried all night, let me try. So she gets down in the doorway, the open doorway, passenger side. She's like, little Larry, wake up, little Larry. And all of a sudden, miracle, he opens his eyes. Like King Tut just opened his eyes after 5,000 years, you know what I mean? And he's like, who are you? And I go, get the address, please, get the address. And she goes, what's the address to the Larry? And he's like, 13312 Sherman Way. And then bam, he's out again like a sack of rice. You couldn't wake him up with cigarette burns, okay? But I get in the car and I'm like, oh my God, thank you so much. And she's like, you take care of little Larry, right? So I'm back on the freeway, and I'm up through 111, back where I was a while ago, and I go up, and then go to Sherman Way, and 3 U-turns, I find his little place, and like way the hell up there in the valley, and I go in, and I can't get him out of the car. It's like an injured, war veteran, and he's, and I got him, he got his weird bag, and I'm like, I took him this far. I'm making sure a key goes into a keyhole, and that there's a place that looks like his apartment, I'm not gonna leave him to get, eaten by raccoons and, mice at this stage of the game. So the key actually works on an apartment. I open it, I just push him in, and he just, stumbles, falls into bed. I get back to my car, my passenger seat, covered in piss. I mean, like an actual racehorse urinated on my passenger seat. Luckily, I didn't know that earlier in the night. You know what I mean? Ignorance is bliss. So anyway, I'm like, I go home, oh my God. It's 3 a.m. when I get home, but I cannot go to bed without washing my passenger seat 2 times. And then the next morning, 3 more times, using 5 different chemicals. I have the cleanest car seat in Los Angeles. Plus, dwarf urine is probably good for you. Probably lowers cholesterol. The next day, I get a phone call, late morning, close to noon. Hey man, thanks for everything last night, man. I lost my cell phone in your car. Sure enough, it's in there. Dude, can you bring it to me? I really need my cell phone. I'm like, sure, Larry, I'll bring your cell phone, no problem. Where do you work? Where are you? He's like, well, you know Man's Chinese Theater? I'm like, of course I know Man's Chinese Theater, yeah. I'm kind of at Man's Chinese Theater. I'm like, do you work in the box office? Do you work concessions? Are you in the regular office? Like, well, I'm kind of in front of Man's Chinese Theater. All right, Larry, just tell me where to find you. You know what I mean? He's like, well, I'm kind of Spider-Man. And I'm like, Spider-Man? Yeah, he's Spider-Man. So I drive up there. He's Spider-Man, just hanging out on the sidewalk in front of me. But he's not regular Spider-Man. He's tiny, itty-bitty, little junior Spider-Man. He's like 1/2 of... Spider-Man might be too much for your little kid, you know what I mean? He's 1/2 of Spider-Man, right? So he's out there, and I go up, and I see Larry, give him the phone, and standing next to him is his buddy, who's a little 2.5-foot Latino guy who's dressed up like a real, little person, dressed up like some kind of Aztec or Inca warrior, which is awesome. I take a picture of both of them, and they charge me $5. $5. Then Larry comes up to me, and he's all wide-eyed with this yearning expression, and he said, hey man, can I get a ride?